I want to just talk to you quickly about this past weekend's crazy things that happened in boxing as usual. But first of all, I was a little concerned. I eventually got a hold of Mark Ramsey because I noticed that Anthony Yard is fighting this upcoming Saturday, which
Okay.
which had me wondering what happened with Arthur Beterbiev. What happened with that fight? And then I was told by Mark Ramsey that, that's okay. Don't worry, the fight's still on. Uh,
Right.
Anthony Yard has another opponent to face before Arthur Beterbiev.
Right. Yeah. I
So,
mean, he's taking a risk. You hurt your hand, you get cut. I mean, if I was fighting for a world title, I would not be fighting anyone in this short period of time. Nah. But hopefully, he comes through okay.
well, I was just gonna say the same thing. I was gonna say, if Anthony Yard loses to Arthur Beterbiev, there might be some excuses afterwards.
Hey, I mean, I can't control that. He's a big boy. He knows what he's doing. He's responsible for himself. So, I don't know if he's in with what they perceive to be a soft opponent. But even so, you get a guy, a grown man, 175 pounds. He's qualified enough to fight you. Anything could happen. You get caught with a shot. I mean, lots of things could happen. So I think if I was Yardy, I wouldn't take such a risk. Maybe he hopes something happens, so he doesn't have to fight Arthur. Who knows?
Well, I just spoke to some of my boxing friends about Anthony Yard and Berbiev, and they said the same thing. They said it's not a good idea. Arthur Berbiev is a monster, and it's not a good idea. Uh,
Yeah.
Anthony Yard should have just jumped straight into that Arthur
I mean,
Berbiev.
I've never heard of it before. I've never heard of a guy with a fight for a world title all set to have to come and get another fight. But that tells you, in my mind, psychologically, that would tell me he feels like he needs a fight. He needs something. He's missing something, and he's willing to take the risk because he wants to sharpen up or something. So that tells me, in a crazy way, it tells me he's a little bit worried, which he should be. I think anybody sane person would be worried if they had to fight Arthur. But that tells me that he knows that he feels like he needs to sharpen up or whatever it is he thinks he needs to do.
Yeah, which leads me to my next question about Fury. Fury just said that if everything goes right with Chisora, he's okay with fighting Usyk. But we know that Usyk ain't no joke. So,
Right.
so what
Yeah.
happens? What happens? What happens if something goes wrong with Chisora?
Right. I mean, but this is different though. He's defending the title against Chisora. That's a real fight. He doesn't. He has to. It's a world title fight. Uh, Yardy fighting a tune-up fight in between, this time and fighting Arthur is weird. It's a little weird. But it's two different scenarios.
Yeah, I guess you're right. And speaking of Fury, I know you don't like this kind of stuff, but I got to bring it out because I was just like laughing my ass off when I saw Fury's dad uh, shouting like some lunatic at Jake Paul at some fight this past weekend.
Yeah, I heard about it. And I saw a little clip. I didn't realize what it was. I was watching it. I thought it was like a wrestling clip, and I mean it's just stupid. Like it's to me it's beyond stupid. They're trying to be, showmen, and he's trying to be a part. And then someone said, all this time I kept thinking, like, the father, he's a really hard man, and he's a really, he rules with an iron fist. He rules the family. And then somebody said his record was a pro was like 6-4 or something, and he's talking about fighting Tyson to the death. So, I have no doubt that, there's a lot of tough guys in different parts of the world, and the gypsies are some of them. They have a different mentality, and fighting in the street is a different thing. But as far as boxing goes, I mean, and the guy's like, I don't know how old he is. He's got to be in his 50s anyway. So I think the whole thing is kind of silly. It kind of, the more it happens, the more you realize how stupid it is, and it turns boxing into kind of a joke.
Yeah, it's just becoming a circus.
Right.
And I noticed that you just talked about James Toney yesterday,
Yeah.
and what a great career James Toney had, and all those tough opponents that James Toney faced. We don't see that right now in boxing. What
Right.
is
I mean,
happening?
you look at James Toney in 19. I mean, I had known this, but I forgot till yesterday. I was looking at it. He fought Michael Nunn, and people forget because of how great James turned out to be. But number one, that was a huge upset. Like, he was never supposed to beat Michael Nunn at that time. And two, he was losing the fight the whole way. If they went the one more round, he would have lost to Michael Nunn. Then he turns around and defends the title against Reggie Johnson 1 month later. It's just insane. And then he fought 6 times in the year. 4 of the fights were against top guys. And that was when he fought Mike McCallum at the end of the year on December 13th in a great, great, great fight. So, I mean, we're trying to get Spence and Crawford to fight each other. And James Toney fought Murky Sosa, Michael Nunn, Reggie Johnson, and Mike McCallum in less than 12 months. I mean, apparently we're never going to see that again. We're never going to see that level of opposition again in that short a time.
No, which makes me laugh, because when I look at these young fighters, like, they keep stalling, and it's like, what are you waiting for? Like, we want to see those type of fights that me and you grew up watching, with Sugar Ray Leonard, Hearns,
Right, Sugar
Hagler.
Ray Leonard. I mean, Sugar Ray Leonard in the span of like a year, 18 months, I think it was. He fought Wilfred Benitez. He fought Roberto Duran twice, and he fought Tommy Hearns. Plus, he fought a couple other fights in the meantime. But he fought those 4, So I think Floyd Mayweather, on the one hand, Floyd did a great thing. He made a tremendous amount of money. He had a great career. He was undefeated. All of that. That was great. The bad part is he's got all these young guys thinking that's how you do it, and that's how they're going to do it. And they think they're going to do the same thing. So now everybody's become businessmen. All these fighters are talking about, I'm not going to fight the guy unless I get 10% of the royalties, and I'm not going to do this, and I'm going to get my name has to be first on the poster, and all this nonsense. And that's why I can't say never, but for the time being, we're not going to see what we want to see. I mean, think about it. When Floyd fought Pacquiao, I had lost interest for literally well over a year before the fight. So I was not interested in that fight. And the way Spence and Crawford are going now, I'm not going to care about that one either. And it's too bad, because they're very good fighters. But to have to go through all of this to see them fight each other is embarrassing.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that fight up, because I was just talking to a friend of mine, and I said the same thing. Like, Spence and Crawford, I think, is going to turn out to be like Mayweather Pacquiao. It's just taking way too long. I think eventually it might happen, but it's taking way too long, to the point where hardcore boxing fans are not going to want to see it, not going to care
Right.
much about it.
Right. I'm losing interest. I want to see people. Part of the appeal is when you see guys willing to fight. Look at Roberto Duran fought Iran Barkley. I mean, think about how big Iran Barkley is next to Roberto Duran. And, you know, no one in there, you know, because Iran is a puncher, was a puncher. You know, James Toney told me at one time that Iran Barkley was the hardest puncher he had ever fought up to that point. And Duran is a former lightweight, and he fights Iran Barkley toe to toe, like, you know, trades bombs with Iran, and didn't ask for stipulations and for Iran to come in at a certain weight, and he can't after the weigh and all this type of thing. So the mentality, and I always talk about the mentality of fighters. The mentality of fighters in this world is regressing. In this country, I'll say this much, in this country, because you have fighters like Artur Beterbiev. He doesn't have that type of mentality. He'll fight anyone on earth at any time. It doesn't matter. He just wants to fight you, and you wouldn't have to convince him in the back room to fight anyone. There's not a man on earth, especially his weight, that he would not fight. Period.
Well, I say the same thing. I say, well, I don't know what's going on because these young fighters, for some reason, I see the difference. You know, with the old timers. You know, there's a lot of old timers that I grew up watching, and I see that they had a big heart and they had cojones, like we say. You know, Latinos say cojones. You know,
Yeah.
so I don't know. I don't know what's going on, but it's just like
It's
ridiculous.
business. They're becoming businessmen. They've become businessmen. You see fighters, and they share their career with a part-time rap career. They're a rapper. No, really, they're promoting. They're managing fighters. They've got a clothing line. You know, being a fighter is serious business, and these guys, in a roundabout way, they're turning it into a joke. You know, when you feel like you can be a fighter and a singer, a rapper, an entrepreneur, you know, at the same time. I mean, it's just not the way it is. That doesn't, you know, people are understandably, and to a degree, they're talking about money. Floyd's got them talking about money, but it's going to hurt the sport in the sense of where when guys are just not willing to fight because they want to take the path of least resistance, you know, then the sport is going to suffer. And after a while, people are going to figure it out and they're not going to be interested. You know, part of the appeal and the reason people like Roberto Duran and guys like that reach that status is because people realized they were fearless and they were willing to fight. You know, Roberto Duran fought Tommy Hearns. I mean, you know, that's amazing. Tommy's huge compared to Roberto. And, you know, these guys there's always an excuse. They've got a manager behind them and they've got a TV station, a network. And it's a horrible era in boxing. We're not in a good era. You know, there's some very good fighters. There's no denying that, but we're not in a good era. We're in a horrible era because fighters think they're businessmen now. And I remember reading, even like 2 days ago, I saw a quote where Mike Tyson said something to the effect of, these guys are businessmen today. I was a killer. I was worried about destruction and destroying. You know, that was my main focus. And the money came with that. Now, guys want money to be talented. They don't want money. They don't want to prove to be a killer. They don't want to prove to go up the hard way. They want to get the money, and then they'll show you what they can do.
Well, you just mentioned network, and that's something that I hear a lot of boxing fans mention when they talk about Spence and Crawford. But I always say, well, what's the problem? Because when Mike Tyson fought Lennox Lewis, they were on both different networks,
Right.
but that fight still happened.
Right.
At the end of the
I
day.
mean, clearly there's a way around it. There's a way to make it happen. But that's how they can justify hiding and, not having the fight happen. But like I say, I mean, Sugar Ray Leonard, Tommy Hearns at the time Ray fought him was a feared killer, a feared man, and Ray fought him. Ray went right to him, and fought him the right way that he needed to beat a guy like that. Showed tremendous heart. I don't see guys with that mentality, and they're losing a society. And it's a whole nother subject, and it's a sensitive one, but it is what it is. I can talk about it because I don't care what people think about me. That's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing when you don't care. But we have a society that is getting softer and in some ways feminized, and it's becoming an accepted thing where guys are becoming that way, and they're not boxing anymore. So many guys aren't even boxing anymore. They're going into different fields, and men are sensitive now, and they're showing their sensitive side. And as a pool of people, eventually it's just going to continue to get thinned out and weeded out and weakened, and we're going to have less and less people in America anyway with the mentality of guys like Sugar Ray Leonard and Tony Ayala Jr. and people like that. We're going to lose that. Society is going to dictate that. Back in the day during the Depression, you didn't have to worry about anyone being a killer because they all were. And Jack Dempsey said, when you have to fight to feed your family, you'll understand what it means to be a killer. We're trying to kill people because and when I say kill, I mean beat up, knock out. They're trying to feed their family, and they feed their family by excelling in boxing and getting bigger fights and more money. He said, when you haven't eaten, and this is one thing I remember he said, when you haven't eaten in 2 or 3 days and you have to make money to eat, you'll understand. And we don't have that now. I mean, guys have people I've never heard of in my life. People I've never heard of. I've never seen their face. And I see them on Instagram, and they have 3 belts over their shoulder. Like 3 championship belts. And I'm like, if you have 3 belts, I'm supposed to know who you are. And you have 3 belts, and I've never heard of you in my life. I don't recognize your face. I've never heard your name or seen you fight. But somehow you accumulated 3 championship belts. Back in the day, there was no such thing. You didn't have a belt unless you were a bad mother effer. Now unknown people have belts. It's you've got people thinking. You have Clarissa Shields, who's had like 12 fights, right? Like 12 fights. I mean, back in the day, 12 fights, you'd still be fighting 6-round fights, 8-round fights. She's got 12 fights, and she said she's one of the greatest fighters of all time. She said it was her, and I think she said Sugar Ray Robinson and someone else, Floyd maybe. And I'm like, this is either mental illness, stupidity, or it's just literally a sign of the times, of the era we're in, where you can win a certain amount of championships. And that makes you think you're great. But it means nothing. It means nothing at all if you had to fight. There's 24 girls, I think, on the planet Earth in her weight class. There's more guys just in the Northeast as a welterweight in her weight class, in the male weight class. But she's got 24 women, I think, on the whole planet, and she's undisputed of that. So you've got people saying she's undisputed. That's a major accomplishment. I go, listen, man, it's cool. It's nice. But major accomplishment? Come on. Like, that's 26 girls, including the terrible ones, like the ones that are 2-7. That's including all of them, So we're in a different era where people think because they have a belt that they can hold out for more money, when the reality is no one cares about your belt at all. The majority of these belts are worthless. They are literally pointless and worthless. They mean nothing. And historically, they will, by people, in the minds of people who know better, they're not going to even register. I wouldn't even call certain people. I wouldn't even introduce them. Like if I introduced you to Sugar Ray Leonard and you didn't know him, I'd be, hey man, this is former undisputed welterweight champ Sugar Ray Leonard. Oh wow, that's great. You know, some of these guys, I wouldn't even mention their title because I wouldn't even know what the title was. I wouldn't even know what sanctioning body, and I wouldn't know who they won it from. We're in a different era, and there's some good fighters. Don't get me wrong, but we're not in a good era for boxing going forward. We're not cementing any kind of realistic history at all.
Yeah, well, if you go online, you see a lot of belts being sold on eBay and Amazon.
Yeah, yeah. Listen, man. I mean, you know, they have a thing now, and friends of mine do this, you know, and I don't want to feel like I'm picking on them, but it is what it is. Now they're giving out IBF and WBC belts to amateurs. You know, they're doing amateur shows and they give IBF sanctioned belts to the winner. You have kids who couldn't even win their Golden Gloves tournament, but they have 3 WBC belts in their trophy case. And you know, they're telling all their friends they're the WBC champion. They don't explain to them it was for one fight. I didn't even win the Golden Gloves. I didn't even win a tournament. I just won a fight on a show, and the promoter gave me a belt. It's two things wrong with it. One, I mean, it's ridiculous to have kids just running around with WBC belts. But two, it's clearly, and I called this 2-3 years ago. I knew this was coming, and I said it many times. Professional boxing is infiltrating amateur boxing. They want amateur kids because they need amateurs to turn pro and become contenders so that they can pay sanction fees to them to fight for their titles. So they need, without new pros, they're not going to make sanctioning fee money. They're not going to continue to be rich. So it's not a nice thing that they're doing. They're not doing it to be nice. They're doing it to infiltrate amateur boxing and groom people to turn pro to fight for their belts so that they can pay sanction fees. That's all it is. And I called 2, 3, 4 years ago, I told people this was going to happen, and it's happening right before our eyes.
It's about money.
Of course it is. Of course.
It's
It's not
about
about
money.
history. It's not about history. It's not about the greats. They don't care. Like, to me, I see a 17-year-old kid who's never won the Golden Gloves, and he's got 3 belts, 3 WBA belts, or IBF, whatever it is. I shake my head. I say he doesn't even realize it's almost like he's stolen valor, like he's pretending to be something. Because when his uncle, who doesn't know anything about boxing, says, "Oh, you're a WBC champion." "Oh yeah, I'm WBC champ." And now the uncle's telling other people, my nephew's a WBC champ. And none of them know enough to go, yeah, but he's only 17. Is that what he's talking about? And they think they associate it with something mega. They associate it with something huge. So they're becoming something that they're not. And it's kind of ridiculous. It's kind of foolish.
Well, I think the problem is that boxing has more casual fans than ever before. So these
Right.
casual fans, they buy into the bullshit. And when we were growing up, there wasn't too many casual fans. Like now, I
But it's
saw.
the internet. The internet. It's the internet. The internet, everybody's a fan. Everybody thinks they know because they see the headline. I had a guy. We were talking. He said Floyd Mayweather is the greatest fighter of all time. I said, all right, if you believe that, that's fine. But I said, what about, and I mentioned Tommy Hearns. I said, I don't think Floyd would have a prayer of beating Tommy Hearns at 147. This guy actually said to me, no, I'm not talking about like ancient people, like old time. He said ancient and he said old time. Like Tommy Hearns was around in the 1920. Tommy Hearns is around, recently, in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s. But he was talking about Tommy like Tommy was, 100 years old. So that told me that there's no chance that he would have any prayer of knowing who Ezra Charles was, Jersey Joe Walcott. Not a chance. So it's like if you say Floyd Mayweather is the best fighter in history, cool. But you don't know who Roberto Duran is. You can't. Your history goes back 6 years. That's your history. Your history goes back not even a decade. You don't even know history. How can you not know history and then talk about history? You can't. Imagine you're teaching history in high school, but you never heard of the Civil War. You didn't even know it happened. But you're the teacher. You're the one telling other people about it. It's a bizarre world we're living in.
Hey, I'll tell you a story. I know it's gonna blow your mind, but I was just shocked when I walked into the store one time, and this girl working there was selling Muhammad Ali T-shirts, and she didn't have a clue who
She
Muhammad
never
Ali
heard of him.
was.
Right. She never heard of him. Right.
But I bet you any money, if I
She heard of
mention
Floyd
Mayweather,
Mayweather. Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
crazy because Muhammad Ali is like known all over the world,
She's selling the shirt. She
and
got
this
the
girl didn't
shirt.
know who Muhammad Ali.
You'd think it would have came up in conversation. Like, hey, who's that guy in the shirt I'm selling? Yeah.
It's just insane. Like when I look at some of these young guys and I talk to them, once in a while about boxing, and even the media guys that just started, and
Right.
I mentioned some old timers and they don't know who these old timers are.
And listen, these are the people choosing who goes into the Hall of Fame. Like, there's guys, media guys who are young, and their boxing experience begins with Floyd Mayweather. That's their history. That's their guy, right? Which is fine. But Marlon Starling is not even on the International Boxing Hall of Fame ballot. He's not even, forget about being in, he's not on the ballot. That is so
Wow.
stupid. It is so unbelievably stupid. But you could ask a reporter today, a writer, and he'll go, who's that? Who's Marlon Starling? I go, you're on the committee that picks who goes in the Hall of Fame, and you don't even know who Marlon Starling is. You don't even know the name. You don't belong. Like it's everything. It's almost like, and it's funny, but I've been thinking this for a while. It's almost like the world is ending, and they know it. They know we only have like 2 years left, so they're just going. Just let them do whatever they want. Just let them. Like I'll give you an example. A guy right now comes out of college. Now in '92, my favorite football player was favorite wide receiver was Lynn Swan. He was the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. Right? How much money you think he made a year? The highest in the NFL, the best. He's the most acrobatic wide receiver ever. How much do you think he made a year back then? How many millions?
And I don't think he made millions. I think maybe he made thousands.
How much? Take a guess. How much did he make?
I'm just gonna throw out a crazy number out there. 300,000.
Almost 336. $336,000 a year as the highest paid wide receiver. Now you get a guy coming out of college who's never played a down in his life on an NFL field, and he'll get $6 million signing bonus before they even find out if he's any good or not. So I'm saying to myself, so what does that mean in 100 years? Are they going to give guys $50 million signing bonus? And I'm saying we're probably not going to be here in 100 years. That's why. That's why movies cost $15 to go to a movie, because instead of charging us $50 to go to a movie in 40 years, they're just going to let us all be dead. And we're not going to have to worry anymore about movies and how much a rookie gets paid. So that's my only explanation why the world is so stupid now, because otherwise I just don't think anybody's planning ahead at all.
And speaking of money, this is one of the reasons why I respect you so much, because you help all these fighters in need, and those fighters that you help are the ones that did a lot more for boxing,
Yeah.
and now they're in bad shape.
Right. Yeah, and there's a lot of them. There's guys I help that I don't publicize because people don't know their situation. But there's a lot of guys out there. Wilfred Benitez, Gerald McClellan, and Pritchard Colon are the most well known, and that's why I'm not afraid to say their name because everybody already knows. But they are like the poster children for this situation. These guys were, money earners and ranked fighters and all these different things, and they're doing, they're in bad shape. I mean, they can't take care of themselves, and I'm helping out the best I can, and I'm doing some good work. I know I am, and I'm about to send Wilfred Benitez $3,000 pretty soon at the beginning of the next month. But in the grand scheme of things, I'm not doing a whole lot. There's guys out there who could raise millions. And I was saying to someone, if I was on that level, if I was on Floyd's level and Jake Paul level, that kind of money, Gerald McClellan, Pritchard Colon, and Wilfred Benitez, their mortgages would be paid. They would never have to worry about food again for the rest of their lives. I would do that for them because I would have money that I would never spend anyway. I would never be able to spend this money. I'm never going to, Floyd, these guys, they're never going to spend that money in their lifetimes. It could be a tax write-off, whatever they got to do. But, it's not happening. So we're going to have to figure out another way.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I was just gonna say the same thing. Like, some of these top fighters right now making millions. I think they should be helping out.
Yeah, and they don't have to do it for publicity. I do it. I get publicity out of it, but it's required. I need it to draw attention. But they could send 100,000. Right? And it sounds like a lot of money. That'd be nothing. That'd be like me dropping a nickel on the ground and not realizing I did it. It's nothing to them. 100,000 would be nothing. And they could do it. They don't even have to publicize it. They don't have to say, oh, look at me. I'm giving 100,000. I'm a star. I'm a great guy. You don't even have to do that. Just secretly send these guys the money secretly.
I got to go back to these young fighters and the different mentality, like the way they act, because of the news that just broke out with Anthony Joshua. I heard is going to be working with Roy Jones Jr. in his corner. I want to get your thoughts on that. Because I think we spoke about this before, and I think it was you who said something about Anthony Joshua waking up in silk pajamas.
No, I didn't say that. I've heard that somebody said that. I think it was. I want to say it was Marvin Hagler who used that. He said it's hard to be hungry when you're waking up every day in silk pajamas. I think it was Hagler. You could Google it and find out. But I think and I understand because I was a fighter, and fighters have the same mentality in many ways. When you lose, you're doing bad, whatever it is, you don't want to admit that it's you. That maybe it's me. Maybe I'm not doing the right thing. Maybe I'm not. Maybe my skills aren't as good, or whatever the case may be. So you get a new trainer. Oh, it must be the trainer's fault. It must be something he's doing. Let me get a new trainer, and I'll be a new person. Now he already did that. He did it for his last fight, and he lost, and now he's getting a new trainer. So I just feel like I understand it. As a fighter, I understand it, but he needs someone to point to him and say, it's you. You have to acknowledge the part of this that's your fault. And, people think like you could take anyone, and if Eddie Futch trained them, they'd be a world champion. I said, no, man, they would suck. If they suck, they would still suck. If Eddie Futch or Teddy Atlas or Freddie Roach or anyone trained them, you still have to have something going for yourself. You have to have natural ability. You've got to have athleticism. You got to have strength. You got to have mental strength. You got to have a mentality. If you don't have that, all the greatest techniques in the world are going to be pointless. Now maybe Roy can talk to him about his mentality, but somebody needs to stress to him that it's not always the other person. It's not everybody wants to blame the trainer. It's easy to go, oh, he didn't train me right. Well, maybe you didn't allow him to. I've been with guys who are hard to train. You know what I mean? So I could say, it could be said that I didn't do certain things for them, but I could also say they didn't allow me to. So it's a team effort, and sometimes people don't recognize that.
So some say that it could be Anthony Joshua's attitude, um, or I don't know what it is, but let's look back at Emmanuel Stewart when he revived Vladimir Klitschko's career after Vladimir Klitschko had got knocked out.
Right. Yeah. Like I say, I mean, it's my point is Emmanuel was able to connect with Vladimir, right? Well, there's other guys Emmanuel couldn't connect with. You know what I mean? So people think like, oh, there's a handful of guys. If I go to Emmanuel Stewart, Teddy Atlas, Freddie Roach, if I go to them, I'm going to be a star. I'm going to be great. And I remember, I tell you what, this is when I first figured it out. Growing up, I always knew who Angelo Dundee was. He's with Muhammad Ali and then Sugar Ray Leonard. I'm like, man, Angelo Dundee's like the king of trainers. He trained Muhammad Ali. So subconsciously, I just assumed if he trained other people, they must win every single fight, right? So then I saw him on TV, and I remember it was a guy named Troy Darrell, middleweight. And it was a top 10 or top 15 middleweight, good fighter, but he lost on TV. And I just remember thinking, like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, but Angelo Dundee trains him. How did he lose? Like, how did he lose a 10-round fight on TV? And it just blew my mind. And then I realized as the years went by, all these great trainers, whoever they tell you is the great trainer, Eddie Fudge, Freddie Roach, Garcia, whoever it is, they have guys that lose 10-round, 8-round fights. They have a gloves tournament. Not everybody they touch is a champion. Not everybody they train is a killer and a super skilled. You know them because of the top guys they train. You don't know them because of the guys that are getting knocked out on the undercard of a local show. You know what I mean? So, a great trainer is a great trainer, but that doesn't mean everything he touches turns to gold. That's a myth.
That's true, but at the same time, I've heard some say that the problem with boxing right now is not just the fighters, but it's the trainers. There's not enough good trainers.
I think as time goes on, the trainers are getting worse also. It's all connected, but part of it is it's too easy to become one. You can become a trainer. Like I could and I mean this. I could go to a show in Canada. I could tell you I can't make it, but I need you to work with my guy. You could fill out an application. I could vouch for you, and you could work the corner Saturday night. You, Ivan, you, right?
Wow.
That's not right. I'll tell you a funny story. True story. I went to a fight with a friend of mine. He doesn't box. He's never been in a ring in his life. The ticket was $40 to go to the fight, right? And he was like a cheap guy, right? He didn't want to pay it. I said, listen, man, sign up as my second. You worked corner with me. You carry the bucket. It'll only cost you $25. And that's what we did. So he's a licensed cornerman in the state of Massachusetts. and he never been in the gym in his life, and he just didn't want to pay another 15 for a ticket, and we got him in. So
Wow.
that's a problem, and that happens every day. That's not a shock. It's just a shock to people that have never been told. So people can become a trainer, and you don't know anything about boxing. Like literally, you could become an amateur boxing coach. It's the same in Canada, I'm sure. In America, you go to a gym, you really like boxing. You could take a test, 100-question test to become a trainer. You pay $50 or whatever it is, and you get a license for a year. Well, here's the thing. They give you the answers to the test. You don't have to know the answers. They give you the answers. They go over it. Everybody passes. Everybody in the state passes. So, and I'm taking the test, and I'm saying two things to myself. One, I couldn't pass this test. I know boxing like the back of my hand, and I couldn't pass this test because the majority of the questions don't have anything to do with boxing. They'll be like, if your heart rate is 49 and it's 100 degrees out, what does that mean? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, oh, it's C. Whatever C was, that was the answer. So they gave us the answer. I didn't know what it was. Eddie Futch couldn't pass this test. Eddie Futch couldn't be a trainer of amateurs in America, but he could train Larry Holmes. So that's the thing. So guys get this certification for being a trainer, and they begin to believe it. They begin to say, hey, I got proof. And you take your son to a gym, and you're a little worried because your 12-year-old kid is going to start boxing, and you don't want him to get hurt. And the trainer says, don't worry. I'm certified by the United States national governing body. I've got my certification. So you breathe a sigh of relief. You're like, oh, this is great. My son is in the hands of a nationally certified coach. Meanwhile, this guy just showed up 2 months ago in the gym. He took a test, and they gave him the answers. That's why he's got a certification. He's going to get your son hurt because he doesn't have a clue what he's doing. It's insane. It's insane.
It is, and it's scary at the same time. Like you said, these kids can get hurt. It's ridiculous. Like,
right. I had a guy. Say another one. This guy, he has a gym in Massachusetts, right? He opens a gym, and it's in Springfield. He opens a gym, so I'm like, wow, it's a gym. It's cool. Another gym. So I'm talking to him one day, and I'm like, oh, so are you the coach? And he goes, oh, no, I couldn't. He told me I can't be the coach. I'm not qualified. Like, I'm just the administrator and everything. So, oh, that's cool, and I respect that. Like 8 months later, I'm at the Golden Gloves. He's there working the corner. He's the head trainer, and he's talking. I hear him talking. He's talking like he's Eddie Futch, and I'm like, man, like 8 months ago, you told me you weren't even the coach. You're not even going to coach people. But he realized all I got to do is sign up and pass this test that they're going to give me the answers to anyway. And now he's the head coach, and you talk to him, and he's got this air about him, like he thinks he's a superstar. And a superstar coach. And I'm like,
wow.
you're a newbie. You're a new guy. What are you talking about? And that's where we're at. That's who we have training the kids. So you tell me how they're going to end up in 10 years as a boxer. Are they going to have the skills of Salvador Sanchez? I don't think so.
That is crazy.
It is crazy. It's insane.
Wow. And that brings me to I don't want to mention names, but I was talking to a friend of mine earlier on about the young fighter that just lost not too long ago. I believe he's lost his last 2 or 3 fights, and this kid was supposed to be the next prospect, contender kind of guy that potentially could be a world channel. I heard some guys talk high about him, and he got hurt, and his trainer, who's his father, just doesn't know what he's doing in the corner. Like, he lets his son take punishment in every fight, and I'm thinking, like, you're gonna get your son killed. Like you gotta
Right.
stop. You gotta stop this nonsense. Your son is gonna get killed. So
Right.
I
Well,
understand how this guy became a trainer.
well, I, I'll say this: the father as a trainer, and we've seen it recently with different guys, Danny Garcia and some of those guys. The father being a trainer is a problem because it's a wide range of things, but they all connect. And it's like you get a guy who's not used to the spotlight, say, and he's there, and all of a sudden he's getting interviewed, and he's not the fighter. He's living vicariously through his son or through his fighter, and so all of a sudden he's a star now because now trainers are stars. Back in the day, Eddie Futch was a star, Angelo Dundee was a star, Emmanuel Stewart was a star, and that's it. Nobody else. You don't even know who the trainers are. I could give you fighters, top fighters from back in the day. You couldn't tell me who the trainer was. No clue. Nobody has a clue who the trainer was. Now everybody knows. The trainers are introduced in the ring. They're like, all right, and in his corner, the great Joe Davis, whoever he is, right? So people want to be stars now. The trainers want to be stars. Now the trainers, they copy Freddie Roach, and they have their name stitched on their mitts, right? Their last name. So it's like you want everybody to know, oh, that's Tony Jones holding the mitts there. He's a mitt master. He's the mythologist. These idiots, right? Everybody wants to be a star. You get a guy on YouTube and he wants to be the star, and they call themselves a mythologist or a mitt master. Well, you already know. When I see that, I know you're the internet era coach. It's more about views and likes and comments and flashiness than, like mitt work is supposed to be boring. Let's be real. Mitt work is not exciting when it's done properly. I remember I was doing the mitts for Chad Dawson when he fought Bernard Hopkins the first time. So I'm doing my thing. I'm teaching and I'm telling him, hey, you got to do this and don't do that and lift your hand up, whatever it was, right? And Ellie Seckback, who filmed it, he put it up, and one of the comments was, yeah, it was cool, but the trainer keeps talking too much. And I'm like, this is not for your entertainment. We don't hold the mitts so you can be entertained. We're holding the mitts to prepare for a great fighter. You idiot. But they're used to watching guys do the videos that are, oh man, did you see that video? That was awesome. That 7-year-old kid was throwing 42 punch combinations. That kid's going to be a future world champion. I'm going, no, he's not. That kid's going to quit boxing once he finds out there's girls in the world that like him. And you're never going to hear his name again. What are you talking about? Like, they watch a video of a kid doing the mitts and they think it's special. I'm like, if you go to a national tournament, there's 400 kids there who could do the same exact thing, no problem. And only 12 of them are going to win the tournament. Everybody else is going to lose. So kids who do this flashy mitt work, they're still going to lose. It's nonsense, but you get people. It used to be fans who thought it was cool. Now you have fans who became trainers who think it's cool. And they're impressing these young kids into thinking it's cool. So now you get a kid, he's a 17-year-old amateur, and he asks who his strength coach is going to be. He's 17 years old. He wants to know if he has a strength coach and what his name is. No, you don't have a strength coach. Don't eat candy. How's that? Don't eat candy. Stop eating candy at McDonald's. Eat some eggs. Eat some cereal. All right. Stop drinking soda. There you go. There's your health advice. But they're 17 years old and they think they're supposed to have a strength coach and a nutritionist because they heard that Manny Pacquiao has one. It's just insanity where we're headed.
It's funny you mentioned this media guy, because this is the problem I have with some of these media guys. Like, they post up their videos because they want to get as much likes. Right. They want to get rich. I don't do this for money. I do this for the love of the sport. And Russ Amber, who you know very well, once said the same thing to me. He said, Ivan, you really love this sport of boxing because you don't make a lot of money, you don't get rich off it, but you really love this sport of boxing. I don't do it like these other media guys.
Yeah.
You
Right.
know,
I mean, look,
it's
money's cool. Keep in mind, money's cool. If we could make money, but a lot of guys wouldn't do it if they weren't making big money. A lot of guys wouldn't be in the sport. They do it for money. Period. They work corners for money. Some of them fight for money. They want to be media people for money. That's how they make their money. That's all they truly care about. Some people glom on the fighters because they want to get attached to them so they can get a deal, you know, selling, advertising something or whatever. They want to get a percentage of that deal. They're around boxing, but only for what the money they can make out of it. And I always say this, here's how you can tell, and this is a fact. If they abolished boxing tomorrow, if they said there is no more amateur boxing, there's no more professional boxing, there's no more tournaments, there's no more fights, no TV will show it. It's done. Well, guess what? I can name for you all the people who are never they're gonna go on and do something else, right? But me, and I can name a bunch of guys, we're still gonna meet a couple times a week and we're gonna spar with each other. And a guy like Russ Amber is gonna be there giving us water, teaching us, telling us what to do, even though there's no money involved. So that's how you would weed the people out. Tell them there's no money involved, and let's see who sticks with it. Because I would stick with it. I do most of what I do for no money. I make good money when I do different things, but I just left the gym before you and I started talking. I didn't get paid to go to the gym. I like going to the gym. I like working with the kids. But you take the money aspect out of it, a lot of people aren't going to love boxing as like they used to. Yeah.
that's the difference between us and some of these other guys. Like,
Yeah. 100%.
I get it. We got to make money, but
right.
I mean, I'm not looking to get rich off this.
Right. Yeah. I know exactly what you mean.
But anyhow, I have to also ask you about this WBA intercontinental title fight. I know you don't really like this title, but since something crazy happened this past weekend between Montana Love and Steve Spark, with throwing Steve Spark over the rope, turning this boxing fight into a wrestling fight. He got DQ'd because he, I think, was getting frustrated losing this fight. He threw Steve Spark over the top rope, got DQ'd, and was very upset with the decision. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that because I haven't really seen anything like this before, and I was confused. I was like, why are you so upset when you just threw your opponent over the top rope?
Yeah. I would imagine in reality he's upset with himself for allowing it to happen. I don't think he could be dumb enough to be upset. He disagrees with the decision. Like, hey man, you shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have disqualified me for throwing my opponent out of the ring. That was uncalled for on your part. I think in his heart he knows he did a stupid thing. I think he's probably mad at himself, I would assume, because he couldn't possibly think that they were wrong. I'm sure he must realize he's wrong. And if he doesn't, he would certainly need someone on his team to explain it to him.
But his whole team was shouting and yelling, just like they were all upset at the referee's decision.
So it was them too. Well, I didn't see it. I mean, did the other kid do something first?
Oh no! Well, Steve Spark was actually winning the fight. I believe he dropped him prior to that. He was winning the fight. He went out of the ring, got back on his feet, went back into the ring. He was ready to fight again. And referee said, "No, this is not."
But I mean, did he do something to get the guy to throw him out of the ring?
Did who do what?
Like, did the guy throw him out of the ring for no reason, or did something happen that escalated it?
Nothing happened. Nothing happened.
Well, I mean, if that's true, then the guy might be an idiot, like, and sometimes people don't realize, like, when fighters have an entourage, people might think that's a bunch of boxing people. More often than not, it's a bunch of idiots. Like, they're not boxing people. Those are his friends from the neighborhood. Those are his guys he went to school with. That's his brother and his cousin and his father. So they're emotional. The worst people are in boxing in that regard is like family and friends, right? Because they don't know anything. Their friend could pull a gun out of his glove and blow the guy's brains out and get disqualified and get arrested. And he'll go, oh, but he had it coming. He was pushing him. He kept pushing. What's he supposed to do? He had to shoot him. Like they would literally make that kind of excuse. So friends being at the way, it's like when you see a fight and you have the fighter in the ring and he's getting ready to fight Clubber Lang, this killer. And his friend, who never boxed a day in his life, is sitting next to him, standing next to him, and he's giving Clubber Lang the mean love and going like this, right? Because he knows he doesn't have to fight Clubber. He knows he's getting out of the ring and he's going to go sit down and leave his friend in there to get killed. So these are the people that we have. It's like a sideshow. And when I see, I'll tell you one thing, little secret. When I see a fighter has those kind of people around him, and he's our opponent, I'm glad. I'm glad he has those kind of people around him, because that gives me an indication of how things went in training camp and where his mind is at, and it's not good for him. I don't appreciate or respect that. So I prefer a guy, Marvin Hagler used to come to the weigh-in with Goody Petronelli, Tony Petronelli, Pat Petronelli, and his brother Robbie, and that's it. There was no trash talking, no cutting the throat, none of that. And nobody could intimidate Marvin. He didn't need a crowd around him to stop it from happening. So that's what I prefer.
And speaking of this fight, we saw what happened many years ago when Alan Green knocked out Jadon Cartrington.
Codrington, yeah.
Yeah. You remember what happened in that fight?
Yeah, I remember. Well, I'll tell you what. I remember exactly where I was when I was watching it. And I remember because I know both guys very well. I've actually spoken to both of them within the last 5 days. So I know them both very well. I actually sparred with both of them at different points. Jadon was a young guy coming up. That fight, I think, was premature for him. Allen was a terror, and but he give Jadon credit. I mean, there was a lot of talking before the fight, but I think it was more Jadon's crew, and I know those guys too. They're all right guys, but that mentality is in, kind of like what I'm talking about, and it didn't work on Allen. Obviously, Allen fed off it in a different way. So when you're talking trash to certain people, you better know who you're talking to. And because some people, that can fuel them. Some people it intimidates. Some people, maybe they thought because Allen was from Oklahoma and they were from New York City, they might have thought he was going to get intimidated. But Allen is he may be from Oklahoma, but he's just as tough and all of that as anybody else.
Yeah, that was crazy. After Alan Green knocked him out, and everyone jumped in the ring, and I was like, "Wow, there's like 100 guys in the ring."
Right. Yeah, that was crazy.
That was crazy. My final thing to you is the undercard for Montana Love and Steve Spark. There was another fight there, a featherweight fight between these two featherweights, with one guy beating this guy to the point where you can see clearly that his opponent wasn't in the fight. Yet this referee let the fight go to the 8th round before this guy got knocked out. I just thought that was crazy. I just thought, like, why isn't this referee stopping this fight? Like, this kid can get hurt. This kid can die. Um,
Right.
I just wanted to talk to you about that because I just feel like some of these referees are making bad calls. Like,
Yeah. I mean, I didn't see it, so I can't really speak on the specific fight. But I'll say in general terms, I can say this: becoming a referee is and a judge is not nearly as hard as you might think it is. The average fan might think it's a really strenuous process to go through to get these jobs. It is not. I know this for a fact, especially in certain states. It is not a strenuous thing to go through. You don't have to be elite, to get there. You learn on the job. Uh, so, I don't know the specific situation. I can't really speak on that 100%, but I do know that boxing, being a referee in a way is like a fighter in the sense of you could get caught in the headlights, you get nervous, uh, you may not believe what's happening in front of you is actually happening. You want to give the guy the benefit of the doubt, and sometimes hindsight is 2020, usually. And I would imagine the referee probably was either reprimanded or he realizes on his own that he's got to do better.
yeah, if you get a chance, check it out. It's Ford versus Lukas. It was
Yes,
that
sir.
fight. And since we're on that topic, I don't think I've ever asked you this question before, but what's your thoughts with Mildred Taylor and Julio Cesar Chavez in their first fight? Because I thought that was a bad call from Richard Steele, since we're talking about referees.
Well, it's like I say, like I just said, hindsight's 2020, right? Now, the people say I can see both sides, right? Now, you can say he should have seen the light flashing behind Melder. Maybe he didn't, during a fight. I've been in fights. I didn't even know the referee was there. You know what I mean? Like everybody sees him, he's standing right there. I didn't even know the referee was there. Like it didn't even occur to me that the ref was there. All I saw was my opponent. So if you ask me after, was the referee in your fight that you just had 5 minutes ago white or black? I'd be like, man, I can't even tell you. I don't even know what he looks like. I wasn't thinking about him. I wasn't paying attention to him. It's a tough spot. There's people say there was only 10 seconds to go. Like it was only 2 seconds, but I think it was he was giving him what he was giving him the count, and it's a tough spot. Here, my thing is this: he didn't know. Like 2 seconds is nothing, right? But 5 seconds is something. 5 seconds, people think it's not a long time. If they said, okay, box, 5 seconds would have been way more than enough time for Chavez to go over and decimate Meldrick. It would have been too long. 5 seconds is a long time in that regard. If there was 5 seconds, Chavez would have went over and obliterated him. Richard Steele doesn't know. He doesn't know there's 2 seconds. Now, 2 seconds and 5 seconds, it doesn't sound like a big difference. It is. It's a huge difference. It's hard for me to criticize him because I know that we have the benefit of seeing it from our seat. We don't have the benefit of seeing it from his seat under all that pressure, and it's a huge moment, and you don't know. Maybe there's 9 seconds left. I don't know. So I would give him a pass on that one. And the fact is, he was winning, but he was getting beat up. Like either way, he was never going to be the same after that fight. Even if he won, he was never going to be the same. He was a ghost. He was a shell of himself, and you could see it. He was beaten up. He looked like he got hit by a truck. So, win or lose, it's not like he was going to go on and do tremendous more things in the game, because he wasn't. He was done after that night.
But I just question it because the 2 second. Everyone keeps saying 2 seconds. If it's
Right, but the referee doesn't know it's 2 seconds. All he knows it's if he saw the blinking light, I guess that's 10 seconds. It tells you like, all right, there's 10 seconds to go. So, but again, people act like 10 seconds is a blink of an eye. I mean, hit the stopwatch and count yourself in your head. 10 seconds is a long time. If it's 5 seconds or 6 seconds to go, Meldrick gets decimated. The referee doesn't know. It's only 2 seconds. He doesn't know. And even in 2 seconds, Chavez could have got there and hit him 2 times. He could have got over fast enough and landed a punch before the fight was stopped. So it's really tough. In hindsight, you wish it didn't happen. You wish it went but you're on the spur of the moment. You got to react. They pay you to do the best of your ability in that moment. And that's what he did as a referee. He was looking out for Meldrick the best he could, and that's what happened.
It's sad though. It's sad because I feel like Mildred Taylor should have won that fight.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
the referee's job is not to favor anyone. His job is to protect the guys, because no one else is going to protect them. Even in some cases, the trainer's not going to protect them. And Lou Duva obviously made a huge mistake. You can't come up on the ring apron. So right then, realistically, it was a disqualification anyway, because he was on the ring apron. That should have called the fight. Lou got excited. He made a mistake. So the whole thing is unfortunate, but it is what it is.
Lou Duva always got excited.
Yeah. He was an interesting guy. Yeah.
He sure was. Iceman, it was a pleasure as always talking to you about boxing.
Yes, sir.
And we'll be in touch. We'll be watching Anthony Yard this Saturday to see what happens.
Right. I hope he doesn't blow it. Hope he doesn't get something stupid happening over here. So we'll see.
We'll see. All right, Iceman.
All right, my man. Thank you for everything.
Hey, thanks again.
All right, buddy. Yes, sir.
Take care.